I'm Gary Nickerson,
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
and welcome to Outside My Window. Our guest in this segment is Philippe Gaudet. Now, in his day, Philip is a chartered professional accountant with his own firm in Church Point and a municipal councillor for the municipality de Clare. He's president of the Atlantic Canada Championship Barbecue Society and a director of the Canadian Barbecue Society. Have an idea now what we're going to talk about?
I
He's
detect a
traveled.
theme.
That's right. He's traveled to Memphis, Tennessee to assist a Canadian team out of Ontario at the World Barbecue Championships, also known as the Super Bowl of Swine. He's also traveled to Niagara Falls to assist the same team participate at the barbecue competition and has been invited to go to Dallas to help the same team participate at the World Food Championships. Welcome to the podcast, Philip.
Thanks for having me.
So I know there was a major event planned, a barbecue championship for Clare, but COVID came along. Give us an update on that, if you would.
So recently we made the decision just to have a smaller event this year, and it wouldn't be an official event. It's basically going to be a practice for next year. So we're probably going to limit it around 150, 250 people, depending on what the COVID rules are in September. But the event's going to be at the end of September this year.
And what's the location at this point? Where's the venue?
The venue is looking like the Richelieu in the Tagan River.
And are you going to have people coming in from all over for this, or is it going to be local only?
We're imagining it's going to be mostly Atlantic Canada. Teams from Ontario and Quebec aren't going to travel down for an unsanctioned event.
Now, what you say unsanctioned? So what does that really mean?
So our event in 2019 was going to be sanctioned by a governing body based out of the States called the Kansas City Barbecue Society. And this year, we're just keeping it for fun. Basically, it's just a practice for next year.
So for the sanctioned events, is there like team points? Is there like a season, like NASCAR or something along that line?
So there actually is points in the season, but Canadian teams kind of have a hard time competing with the States because in the States, if you live in Kansas, you can go to an event every weekend. Here, it's pretty tough to go to an event. We would have been the first one in Atlantic Canada, but there are points. And the other benefit is if you were to win the event, you would qualify for some major tournaments in the States, such as the American Royal in Kansas City and the Jack Daniels Invitational in Tennessee.
Now you mentioned Kansas City, and one of the side effects of all the Food Network stuff I've been watching over the last 18 months is that there's different types of barbecue, and each one has its own little theme to it. So can you kind of roll through the major types? You've got Kansas City, you've got Texas, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we'll start with the Carolinas. They're known for either a mustard base and pork, or they'd also cook a lot of vinegar-based sauces, but also pork. And then you'd have the Kansas City region, which would be your tomato-based. And then there's the Memphis area that's close to Kansas City, but probably a little spicier. They'd be more pork-based. Kansas City would be pretty much anything barbecue. And then Texas is the other major place, and depends where you are in Texas, but they're famous for their salt and pepper and smoke and keeping it simple. Maybe sauce on the side, but you could offend some people with that idea.
Yes, we wouldn't want to do that when it comes to the barbecue. But it seems like everybody's really passionate about their barbecue. Like that seems to be quite a thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Texas especially. But I haven't tried many Carolina styles, but Memphis and Kansas City, they're pretty close. And Kansas City is known for their burnt ends, which is a part of the brisket that's cubed up, and when it's done right, it's just like eating butter, like it just melts in your mouth and it's delicious.
It's their version of chicken nuggets, right?
Not quite.
I, I didn't mean to insult anybody. Please don't send me nasty emails. But one thing about is I see a lot of people using the smokers versus using like a barbecue. So can you just educate us a little bit about the difference between the two?
Yeah, I mean, a smoker historically was to cut these big, tough cuts of meat that if you cook it low and slow, and by low I mean under, around 250 Fahrenheit and lower, and you just cook it long time until the meat starts breaking down and becomes tender. Propane grills, typically have been used, to cook something quick and hot, like a, steak or a burger. Um, Now, you don't need to buy a smoker to smoke meat. You could always modify your propane barbecue a bit by adding a foiled pouch with some wood in it.
Now, talk smoker for a second. There's a variety of different wood that I see that they use. Cherry, apple wood, and so on. Does it really, does it really change the flavor profile of the meat that much?
I can't say I notice a huge difference. Um, no, I never really tried too much mesquite just because when I read books, they always say mesquite's the hardest, not the hardest, but gives I guess the hardest smoke flavor. And, smoke, you need to balance it. It's like salt and pepper. You want to give it some, touch of smoke, but you don't want to over smoke it either.
Now, part of the event in 19 was also to have a judges course. Can you talk a little bit about that? And is that going to come back too at some point?
Yeah, I was just talking to the folks in the States earlier this week. We're looking at the end of May, getting Jim Johnson to come down. He's a well-known, he's won I don't know how many events. So it was going to be two parts. One of them was to be so you can become a certified judge in the KCBS Society, which is Kansas City Barbecue Society. And then there's also be a cooking class attached to it where you're going to learn to do competition style ribs, chicken, pork shoulder, which is kind of like your pulled pork, and brisket.
Obviously, judges have to have obviously some training. Can anyone be a judge? Can you teach anyone how to properly and fairly judge a barbecue? And yes, I'd be more than happy to volunteer. Just saying.
Yeah, no, I think anybody that can, one of the big scares with COVID was that, it took your smell away. So,
Oh, yes, that's right. Sense of taste too. Yes, that's right.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, some teams are going to have a little bit more spice than others. So, if you can't, if you find black peppers too spicy, it might not be fair to some of the teams if you're a judge, just because, some people are going to be using some cayenne, but it's all about balance as well. But no, anybody can become a judge. You just got to be a paid member. I forgot what the fee is. It might be $40 a year US or something like that. And you can go anywhere. So if you go on vacation, you can plan your vacations around it. Our event in 2019, we had judges from California, Tennessee, Colorado, Maine, Kentucky, basically all over the place that were planning their vacation around our event. And then I think there was a competition in Maine the following week. So they're going to basically tour the Atlantic provinces and then end up in Maine the following weekend.
You were talking earlier, Philip, about the distinctions in the different barbecue styles in the States. And I want to ask you about Canada. Does the same apply to Canada? Are there different distinctions in the barbecuing style from, let's say, Clare to maybe Ontario?
No, there wouldn't be that distinction at this point. I mean, the pig roasters down here would be a bit different than what we would see elsewhere. And here they're wrapped in aluminum foil from the beginning and don't see the fire at all. But other than that, no, there's no real flavor differences. We're pretty much copying the States somewhat. I mean, there are some great Canadian brands being developed now, especially out west. Atlantic Canada is a little behind in terms of competition and growing, flavors. But no, I wouldn't say there's a big, regional differences at this point.
So, I mean, certainly when people think barbecue, they think chicken and ribs and brisket and the like. But, one of the things that we have a lot of is seafood. So, is there a nice niche for us in that angle from the Canadian standpoint?
That's a good question. It's not something I've really looked into a whole lot. Now, I mean, smoked salmon would be your most common thing you'd hear of, especially on British Columbia side. I mean, I don't know how many people in Ontario would have had, smoked haddock or any of the other local smoked stuff, but it's a good question. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, certainly, it lends itself to a quote unquote Canadian style. I mean, seafood is our thing.
Yeah, for sure. I know one of the worries with scallops is, can you dry it out too quick and stuff like that? But no, that's a great point.
Scallops smoked, I'm not too sure. I've had smoked salmon. Smoked salmon's good. Arctic char is even better. That's a little tougher to get.
Yeah, but you can also cook on charcoal without adding smoke as well, right?
Well, and that's the thing. So let's go back to that part for a second. So I'm in personally, I'm doing a lot of research right now because I've got to replace my barbecue, and the one that I have, although I love it dearly, I can only get parts out of the States, and some of it's just not repairable at this point. And of course, they discontinued the model, so now I got to find something new. So, if when you're looking for new equipment, the three things that kind of come to mind as I went through was propane, obviously, charcoal, obviously, and then there's the pellet stoves. Are they any better or more leaning towards a smoker because it's wood pellets?
I wouldn't say they're convenient.
Okay.
You don't have to baby the fire too much with a pellet smoker compared to charcoal. It's got a hopper. It's got sensors, so it kind of takes care of itself. So if you want to do a nice long cook and not have to baby the fire, they're great for that. Do they give as much flavor as charcoal? A little bit less, but they're convenient. But I guess it all comes down to do you want to baby the fire or not?
Now, like with a lot of things, of course, you get what you pay for. So are barbecues the same way?
Oh yes, for sure. There's big difference in price points. You can get a nice big smoker for the price points are all over the map. I mean, if you want a nice wood fired, which is basically cooking with wood instead of pellets or charcoal, you want the nice fancy ones that you see on TV. They're going to be 15,000 or more. But you can also buy pellet smokers in $600-700 range. There's probably some other brands that I haven't looked too much at. Charcoal, I mean, the Weber Smoky Mountains are great to get started at as a water smoker. They're going to be starting the close to $500 range with after tax. And then you got the what are they called? Like the Big Green Eggs. There's a couple of different brands. Oh, ceramic grills. I mean, they all start off at a pretty high price as well. And so yeah, no, I mean, I haven't really. How could I say that? I bought one cheap smoker once, and I won't do that again.
Yeah, and that's how I kind of feel as I go through and I do some of my research on things. And when I look at the brands, that's one thing, but when I look at at the specs, so when people are looking for just a basic barbecue, got to feed the family kind of thing, what would be some of the main components they should be on the lookout for?
Well, again, I guess they should decide what fuel type they want. Propane is still a lot easier than managing charcoal, but you can't beat the flavor of charcoal. Um, so I guess they should figure out what they want to cook first. Like the Weber Smoky Mountain, for example, which is a great smoker to start off with. And a lot of teams use them in competitions. I wouldn't necessarily cook a steak on them or anything or a burger or anything that needs to be cooked hot, because it's not designed to go hot, because there's a water pan that separates between where you put the food and where the fire is. So I guess versatility should be determined. What do you want to cook? If you want something that can cook a steak, ceramic grills are great because you can go low or you can go high.
Are there rules, Philip, when it comes to sanctioned championships that apply to the type of fuel that can be used during those championship barbecues?
Yeah, you can only use propane to start your fire. Um, Other than that, you can use charcoal, wood, or pellet.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of what's what I'm looking for? Regulations or restrictions on ingredients?
So basically, the day before the competition, the meat will be inspected to make sure that it wasn't pre-seasoned. Um, so that's the first step. In terms of ingredients or sauces, you're free to use whatever you want. The strictest part would be actually the presentation box. Um, you're not allowed to put any garnishes other than green vegetable, like leafy green stuff, leafy like lettuce or stuff like that. Um, what else would there be? If you're like when you're cooking the pork shoulder, it has to be at least 4 pounds. Other than that, it's not too bad. The rules, a lot of it is common sense.
So, when you're doing that and low and slow is the way to go, so the event must like stretch out over a couple of days, doesn't it?
Yeah, typically, like what we envisioned for our event was a Saturday. We were going to try to showcase our local ingredients. So we're going to have like some seafood based contests, which would be basically just for fun, but just to promote our scallops and our lobsters. And then it gives the teams while they're here something to do, and then while they prepare the meats. A lot of the turn-ins are typically like the Sunday around noon, half-hour increments, and so teams will start around 11 o'clock the night before to start cooking.
Now, these Rib Fest events that you see popping up all over the place from before, are they just showcase things, more pomp and circumstance than real barbecue?
Oh no, they're real barbecue. Um, they're commercial enterprises. I mean, it's what they do for a living. They do a great product. No, it's good stuff.
So when your event comes back around, what's it like for the public? Like if I just show up as a spectator of sorts, what could I expect from the event? Now let's take a step back and go, full bore to what the event should have been, not necessarily what you got coming up, but what could I as a spectator expect to see?
So we're trying to make it as fun as we can for everybody. So one part is we're hoping to have a microbrewery festival with it. Another part is to have some axe throwing. and then basically a food festival around it. I know we had a company that does beaver tails that were going to come down and serve some food. The Saturday we were going to have a People's Choice Award. So that's basically what we're envisioning for the public. Is it's a food festival and a chance to kind of see some setups for some teams and hopefully draw interest in them, and one day jumping in.
Is there a Facebook page that people can sort of follow up on? Keep an eye open on things.
Yeah, for sure. It's the let me just find. It's the Atlantic Canada Barbecue Championship Society.
Perfect. I wanted to ask you something when you were talking earlier about charcoal and propane. Recall my father was very avid charcoal barbecuer. He did not believe in propane, kind of old fashioned that way. And I know there were some people. I had a friend of mine who propane barbecued, who used a propane barbecue for years, and then it gave way, kind of like Quinn was saying happened to his. And he just took his old propane barbecue and kind of turned it into a charcoal barbecue, and he said he'd never go back to propane again. Are there kind of two schools of thought when it comes to those two different fuel sources?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it comes down to the convenience factor when it comes to propane. Do you want to start charcoal 15 minutes ahead of time to cook a hot dog? Probably not.
Yeah, that's the thing. I remember the old hibachi days.
Oh,
You're spending a while getting the coals up to speed before you can go do anything. And if all you're going to do is roast a couple dogs and a burger, then it's almost not worth the time and effort. And for me, unfortunately, I always had trouble starting the briquettes. So sometimes my stuff kind of tasted a little odd because I had used a little too much starter fluid.
Okay, I don't use any lighter fluid.
Well, things have evolved over time too, right? So they've got better ways to make that happen.
Yeah.
So Philip, obviously, for an event like this, it doesn't work without volunteers. So if somebody's interested in volunteering for you, do they just reach out via the Facebook page, or is there another avenue for that?
Yeah, no, the Facebook page would be great. Probably the best way to get a hold of us.
And at what point would or should they get in touch with you? Is now all right, or should they wait a little closer to the event?
The sooner the better, just especially if they have any experience organizing events. It'd be, greatly appreciated.
so I got to ask you, Philip, how did you first get involved in the real serious part of, if I can use the term, professional barbecuing?
Yeah, well, it's kind of it started 6-7 years ago. Me and my dad were watching TV, and we saw these, Barbecue Pitmasters TV show, and we were looking at Memphis in May, and we said, "Oh, that'd be cool if we could go." And my uncle has a cottage at a place called Morrison's Mill, and we said, "Oh, we could have a Morrison's Mill in May." So we organized the first event, and we were expecting 5 teams, 30 people, and I think we ended up with 8 teams and 80 people. And then there was just a lot of interest, and I'm a competitive person, and I just really like as I get older, if I start losing speed, at least I can still cook.
You got to eat no matter what, right?
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. And then in 2019, I guess it would have been the Christmas before, I bought my dad tickets to go see Memphis in May. It's just not the flights, but the entry tickets. And then I was part of the Canadian Barbecue Society Facebook page, and I started messaging a few teams to see if they needed any help. And when we showed up there, it was an amazing experience. The fact that we got to be part of a team, the team finished 4th in chicken at the World Barbecue Championship, which was pretty cool. We got to go on stage, and kind of got hooked on that.
So when you're part of a team, like how does that work? Does everybody have a certain list of duties to deal with?
Yeah, I mean we didn't do a whole lot of cooking when we were there. But we helped with a lot of the cleaning, getting water, turning in the food to be judged, making sure the beer doesn't run out, stuff like that.
Well, that's important.
Yeah, it was a cool setup in Memphis. Like, there's 250 teams there, 30,000
Wow.
people. It's a great experience. And the way it's set up is really cool. Like, they have a pantry on site for teams if they need chips or pop or water. And then they also have like an 18-wheeler next to there full of beer that, if you're on the team, you can go buy a keg or two for and bring it back. It was a fun trip.
Yeah, the keg doesn't fit well in the luggage, though.
No.
You can't carry it on either. They sort of frown on that. Been there, done that. No, so at an event that large, how do they judge? Do they do it in like sections?
So the judging in Memphis is not it's not Kansas City style. It's the Memphis Barbecue Network. So the Memphis Barbecue Network is a little different. It has actually two parts for the judging. One of them is like a dog and pony show. You have three judges go to your site and you present them pieces, different barbecue. The team I was with did a whole hog, so you had to give them parts of the whole hog, and they judge on site, and there's a whole presentation with it. And then there's a blind box that there's no way to the people eating know who you're. They don't. There's no way for them to know whose meat they're winning because there's some top teams there that win. So you don't want any biases from the judges. So it's
Right.
blind box, and turn in is all at the same time basically, and you just hope that you get a good table of judges.
But like I said, is it done in groups or is it just judged? Everybody's judged across the board.
Everybody's judged across the board at the
Wow.
same time. Basically. I mean, you don't have. It's not 5 or 6 judges. There'd be like 200 judges in the tent, right? The scoring system will be all based on the same criteria.
Right. Right. And everybody's certified, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there should be some consistency there, right?
Yeah, and like one of the biggest ones in the world would be the American Royal in Kansas City, and that sometimes has close to 500 teams,
Wow.
which would require 500 judges. So that one can be tough to get. You can get some questionable results of that one just because there'll be some. There's no choice but to have rookie judges there tasting and stuff.
It's done on a point system, correct?
Correct. So it's based on taste, tenderness, and appearance.
Okay. Has there ever been an instance where you've had like two or three that made the same number of points, and if so, what happens then?
Well, actually, when we got a fourth place chicken in Memphis, there was a 7-way tie for first.
Wow.
So we finished fourth in the tiebreak. So I don't know the tiebreak process there in Memphis, but Kansas. I mean, they all have a tiebreak system. I'm not quite sure what the system is.
Dueling spatulas at 5 feet or something, right?
Yeah,
Rock,
and
paper,
then
scissors.
and when you're judged, there's 6 pieces. You have to put 6 pieces in, and they're going to take the 5 highest scores and drop the lowest one, just as a way to try to bounce, just in case there's a tough judge at your table, or just to try to get a better average.
So these TV competitions that you see where, oh, you got 30 minutes to do this or 40 minutes to do this. That to me, that doesn't seem like an appropriate amount of time to showcase anybody's real skill set for smoking or barbecue. Like it doesn't seem to be, to me, to be a fair way to do it.
Well, I mean, when you have 30 minutes, you wouldn't be making ribs or anything like that. It would probably be a steak or something like that you can grill quick. But one of the biggest new trends or hottest trends in barbecue is going hot and fast. So instead of cooking your brisket in 12 hours, you cook it in 4 hours. Basically, you cook it at 300 instead of 225, and wrap it in foil and steam it, or braise it, I guess would be the correct term, which is getting really popular. So teams can get up at 5 in the morning instead of being up all night.
In a situation like that, though, does it really give enough time for the flavor profile to fully develop?
I think it does.
Or have you got to, or have you got to play Bill Nye the Science Guy and try to figure out a better way to make your spice mix to or rub to work in that amount of time?
Well, the margin of error would be a lot low. Would be a lot higher because you're cooking higher and you're cooking with sugars, which can burn easy. So there is definitely a risk to reward. That you got to factor in. But no, I mean you because people inject, they marinate, they brine. I mean, there's lots of ways to get flavor in. Yeah, no, there's lots of opportunity to get flavor in. Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to barbecue or smoke?
I would say probably brisket, and competition style chicken is a close second.
All right, so what's competition chicken? Explain that one a little bit.
It's lots of flavor in every bite. But so with chicken, you can turn in pretty much any part of the chicken you want. The most common part would be the bone-in chicken thighs, because they're more forgiving than a chicken breast would be. And basically, you rub them, cook. I mean, the skin is the challenging part there because when you're cooking at a lower temperature, chicken, the skin can get rubbery. But when you can get the nice bite through skin, I mean, the sauce combination I use, I love it.
Leading up to most competitions, Philip, teams will do some kind of preparation. Sports teams do whatever they do. Is there any kind of prep that a barbecue team does beforehand? Do you sit down, go over the different recipes for the rubs and that kind of thing, or you just get on the road and go and do it?
Some teams just go out on the road and do it. A lot of the top teams will, cut the meat ahead of time and vacuum seal it again, and then pre-make their injection, their rubs, and their sauces. And then, because the more you can do ahead of time, the easier it's going to be for sure.
Now, in traveling across the border into the U.S., so if a Canadian team's going down into the U.S., uh, what kind of challenges do they face at the border doing that?
Um, I don't know. I can't say, like, I flew into Memphis and I flew to Ontario, so I can't say I've experienced it too much. But when I was in Ontario, we went. It was in Niagara Falls, so we crossed the border to go pick up some meat that was delivered to just on the other side of the border, because basically they ordered some crazy expensive meat. It's called Australian Wagyu. Uh, so when we crossed the border, we did have a bit of a hard time because oh, we had like 12 racks of ribs, 7 briskets, and some chicken. So they were like, "How much?"
Yeah.
But it wasn't bad.
It's personal
If you say,
consumption. It's personal consumption. I
yeah,
swear.
if I mean, imagine if you cross the border, say you're going to work at a competition, it'll be a lot harder than just saying you're going to compete.
Yeah. Yeah. Contest is a contest, right? But it just seems to me like if you're going across the border and you got little baggies with your spice mix in it or whatever, you're you're, you're going to hit a little bit of scrutiny at the border.
Yeah, because a
So
lot of teams travel in like RVs and stuff as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, they'll search them just as bad, I'm sure. But
yeah,
it it just seems like when they legalize marijuana in Canada that when I travel for work, it's a little bit more scrutinized.
yeah, yeah. No, I haven't had that problem.
Well, Philip, we can't thank you enough. It's been interesting. I know we could talk a lot more. You've got our mouths watering, and everyone I know is really looking forward to that event coming up in Clare in September. And as you mentioned, Philip, folks can just go on the Atlantic Canada Championship Barbecue Society Facebook page and keep a check on things. Philippe Gaudet, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Our guest has been Philippe Gaudet. I'm Gary Nickerson.
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
And this has been Outside My Window.